Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am so excited today to be joined by Charlene Woodward for our first little chats with Char that we put together to have a little chat about a book that Dogwise published several years ago. And I want to ask Charlene about this book. So today we're going to be talking about Therapy Dogs, the second edition, training your dog to reach others. And if you are watching live or if you're watching the replay, we're going to include a coupon code for you to be able to save 20% on this book at dogwise.com at the end of our viewing. So stick with us to the end. But good morning, Charlene. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good.
Glad
It's
to hear it.
almost summer where we live.
That's right. Yeah, it's finally
Like
getting
48
warmer.
degrees when I woke up this morning, but the sun is out. So
That's good. We had a huge thunderstorm here yesterday, so I'm very glad that the sun is out here today as well.
I'm sure your dogs did not like that.
No, they had to stay inside all day, so that was not fun for them. So, Charlene, I want to talk a little bit about this book that Dogwise published, and you have mentioned to me before that this actually was an interesting publishing project because it was a first for Dogwise. Can you talk a little bit about how this book came to be?
Yes, I'd love to, because we knew the author from having done events, human animal bond events, APDT type events. And she was a lovely person who just took her knowledge and of working her dogs as therapy dogs and turned into a book. The book was published by what was called Howell Publishing, which was a division of Macmillan. And Howell was publishing dozens, would be a fair number, of dog books. And we were book retailers. So we were dog book retailers. So we would get the book, we bring it to shows. It was a unique book in that, you're going to a dog show and it's a dog show, right? But so many of the people were there for other reasons, including they wanted to train their dog to be a therapy dog. And so in the late 90s, 1990s, as opposed to any other 90s, and in the late 90s, the publishers were pruning their inventory. And these were all beautiful quality printing, hardcover, color cover, that kind of thing. And therapy dogs, along with some other ones, were ones they were dropping. The author became aware of it. She comes to Dogwise. Well, Dogwise was selling this book. Fact is, we may have been the best retailer they had for that title. And what we ended up doing was contacting the author when we couldn't get it any longer, and finding out that the publisher had let the rights revert back to the author. So it was real easy. We knew her, she knew us, she trusted us. And so because we had sold this book for several years, we were able to tell her we did not want to just reprint this book. We wanted to have the feedback that we had gotten over many the years that we had been selling it. We wanted to utilize that and create a second edition. And this was where we learned a lot about the publishing industry. When Dogwise does things, we obviously would want to fact check. So what is a second edition? A second edition is at least 1/3 of the information is new. So we knew we had to accomplish that. Then we could go to the author and say, these are the things that we hear when we sell books directly to customers at shows, because we did a lot of traveling to dog shows around the Northwest and ultimately around the whole country. And so we said, these are the things that are missing. These are the things people go, well, I read the book and it didn't include this. So we had this huge advantage, much more than I would think the original publisher would have, because we talked to people. And so the second edition improved on the first edition. You might still find the first edition. It's a green cover. It might be out there in the use. And it's not that it's bad information. It's been many years, so I'm not sure I could tell you, but the kind of thing that we had is, well, I'm going to do it at such and such a place, because sometimes people, well, number one, people back then had trouble understanding therapy dog versus assistance dog. So
it's interesting you say that. People still have a hard time understanding the difference. Yeah, it's hard to know.
Well, so clarifying that, also helping them understand in a much more global way, the liability issues, the
Mm,
safety issues, you should not be just walking your dog into a nursing home saying, I've got this really friendly dog. And he really likes to be pet. It really prepared people. Now, this is also a book that you can read and do this kind of training on your own. But a lot of it still happens. A lot of well-intentioned people um, take their dogs to places maybe where their family lives, nursing homes, assisted living, and it works out just fine. I mean, that's the funny thing about it is you should do all the preparation, but on the other hand, you'd be surprised at how it kind of works out. I mean, I think if you knew you had a bitey dog or a
right.
fearful dog, you wouldn't be taking them in there.
Yeah, reading through this book, just preparing for this interview, I have a ebook version of the book, and I was reading through it and thinking like there's a whole section about insurance. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, insurance, that's probably important." The thing that is interesting is that there's so many people who still don't know the difference between a service dog, a therapy dog, an emotional support dog, and the language has changed over the years, and the way that dogs are in public has changed over the years. And so being able to define those terms and help people understand is super important.
Yes.
So I'm glad this resource exists.
And you're seeing it. I have an older friend who moved into a new apartment house, and boy, it was interesting because she has a cat. Okay, so it's not a dog, but they needed, and I don't think it's inappropriate, but they were adamant that either she get papers from her doctor. Now, notice it wasn't a dog behaviorist and an animal behaviorist, but that she get documentation showing that she needed this animal. And it was worrisome because they were going to charge 120 more a month just to have a cat in the apartment. And, again, I'm not in the real estate business, so maybe it's probably a good reason, but we've come so far that it isn't just a rubber stamp anymore that you need this animal. And I'm still surprised in airports, the dogs particularly, because they're notable, often they're out of their carry case. And I know that there's a right way to do it and a less than right way to do it, but I'm still surprised that it works out so well.
Yeah, and I think, it is amazing thinking about a lot of the books that Dogwise has
Did I
carried.
mute you? I might have found a
Oh,
way to mute you, dear. I
oh
can't hear
dear.
you.
Hang on. Technical difficulties. Let's see. Can you hear me now? No. No. Oh no.
I turned you off and on.
Can you hear now?
My speaker is on.
Let's see.
Yikes.
If anyone is joining us live, can you let us know if you can hear the audio from both Charlene and me? And if not, maybe we'll jump off and jump back on. Let's see if
Can
anyone.
you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
I didn't touch anything.
That's okay. Hold on. Let's see. Okay. Okay, we've got two people who are joining who say that they can hear the audio. Can hear you both.
Oh, that's nice. Someone can hear both of us. Erica will have to learn sign language for us to communicate.
Okay, let's see. Okay, both of us coming in loud and clear. Charlene, can you hear now?
I can.
You can?
Yeah, I can.
Great.
Whatever
Okay.
you did.
Okay, reset it. Fantastic. So we do have a question from the audience that I want to ask, and it's such a great question. Talking a little bit about the history of Dogwise. When you created Dogwise, can you tell us a little bit about that story? How did you create Dogwise? How did it come to be? But then what was the decision-making process as far as focusing on dogs and dog training specifically?
back then they definitely had business plans, and we're talking about the middle 80s. They definitely had business plans, but that's not how Dogwise happened. What happened was my husband was working in a bank, and he had a coworker who was a German Shepherd trainer, breeder, shower kind of person. And at that time, I was doing something which I later learned is called, I was a book jobber. And all it meant was didn't have a store, didn't have inventory. I just special purchase books for people who needed it. Technical libraries, uh, Corps of Engineers, Naval Air Station, ADAC. And because it was very part-time. It was very, I had this big red book that told me how to find a lot of the publishers, because you really have to put yourself back in the 80s, right? And so this coworker of his said, dog people love books. Oh, she asked us to get, and if you're a German Shepherd person, you would know these books. Uh, oh my gosh, I can't think of any. Big red, big coffee table book from some really hard to find publisher. A German import book about this thick about the origins of the breed with like fold out pictures and stuff. They were great books. She goes, oh, that was great. You got them so fast. Didn't know any better. And then she said, dog people love books. You should bring some dogs books to a dog show. And I go, really, dog people love books? How many books would a dog person need? Two, you know? So so we then happened to inadvertently go to one of the biggest shows in the country in
Oh my God.
Puyallup. It was a bench show, and it was January, and I mean, anyone who knows dog shows know they're on the weekend. And we've got a little Toyota Camry with a hatchback, and we had to have her tell us what books to bring. So, the dog owner's medical handbook, the encyclopedia of dog breeds, Mother Knows Best. Um, I'd give you a minute, I'll think of them, but 80s books. And so it was 4 boxes of books, and she told us, I said, well, I don't want to acquire a bunch of inventory that I have no use for if it doesn't sell. She said, oh, that's okay. Dog people are used to ordering, and then you ship it to them. They'll give you their credit card. Basically, they're super trusting. I mean, again, not the kind of frauds we see right now, but they'll give you the money and you'll ship them the book. It'll be fine. So back then, we didn't know anything about margins, by the way, meaning, I thought 20%, oh boy, I'm just going to be rolling in the dough. Well, remember, I'm not selling a car, I'm selling a $15, $20 book. So anyway, so we go to the show, we have 4 boxes of books, and we set them out on, folding tables. And we were the most popular booth there because there's the grooming people and the dog food people and all that, but they only would see a book dealer once a year. She would come up from California. And since I didn't know any better, I just, oh, okay, here. And the best thing about Larry and I is we did not know anything about dogs. And it ended up to work and continues to work in our favor. If we had a not rigid even, like an enthusiastic point of view about how to train breeds that you like, what technique you use to solve, torsion in the Great Dane stomach or whatever, we would be advocating our point of view. So the best thing we did was we took really good notes. Did I know what an IG was? No. Had I ever even seen a Rottweiler? Oh no, but I thought they were the coolest breed. PBGV, I still don't say it right, Petit Basset Vending Griffon, but did I want one of them right away? Yes, until I found out they're a working dog. And I am a couch dog person. So anyway, so that is what happened. And we were so popular. We go, well, okay, let's go to one next weekend, and let's go to one the next weekend. The next weekend, it was this was in fairgrounds, and we were indoors. You didn't have to wear, your down parka. The next one was in a open cattle coverage thing in another county, and then the next one and the next one. And so we learned really quickly what sold. Because I was in that book jobber business, I had accounts with lots of publishers as well as a middleman kind of thing. So that's how it started. We just kept adding books. I thought, how many titles can there be on dogs? 300, 500. We stopped at 2,000, and
Wow.
2,000 meant we weren't carrying the fluff books. We learned not to do that. Like, oh, this is a really good book on, dogs doing cute things. Well, our audience are our audience, which we now have for, is that 96, 2006, 40 years.
Wow.
I can't even tell you. On the first week that we started mail order, I thought, oh, if we sell $100 worth of books a day, we'll be in gravy. But anyway, so that's how we started. So I like your question. Now, what was the decision? The decision was called positive reinforcement. Yeah, let's see.
It's the same question. Same
Yeah,
question.
well, I know. And I'm just going to tell you one other thing. The fact that we are not trainers, I've had secondhand dogs that I just put up with. I mean, if they were extremely difficult. But, I got a hand-me-down dog from my sister. I got a Basset that just was 2 years old. Nobody was taking the dog out. Oh, she was just delightful. But 20-minute walks were 2 blocks because we were sniffing.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of goes like that. So we are not our customer. And sometimes I kind of have to tell people that because I think they might think I know what my customers know about dogs. I know about what's on the back cover of the book. And
Mm-hmm.
the best thing about doing events, APDT, dog shows, is listening to people.
Yes.
There's a really cool experience we've had where we just stand in the booth and listen to one trainer sell the other trainer a book that's on the shelf, or tell someone to stay away from it. And then that's how I got my knowledge. I'm remembering a book on, I didn't know what the word whelping meant, So a customer had to explain it to us, and how whelping was different than, breeding, and how none of that included guaranteed knowledge about genetics. So luckily for us, because I was just a little eager beaver, finding self-published books and then mainstream books too. It just continued to be such a positive category. And now I feel like we know our people, we listen to our people, and as publishers, which is a whole, maybe another question, something we could talk about, is now, because we're exposed to it all the time, we aren't going to just publish the next dog training book.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to publish the book where there's a hole in the inventory. And by that, I just mean in the literature, I should say. And then we know the experts. It's been a very, it's worked out just kind of like this, and a lot by accident and a lot by work.
Well, and it sounds like you and Larry both, you're learning as you go. You had this one thing, and then it led to another thing and another thing. And hearing you talk about being at dog shows or at the APDT conference and standing in the booth and listening, a couple of things came up for me. Hearing you talk about, a dog trainer would basically sell another book to a dog trainer. I have seen that happen, not just in real life, but on social media. I'm watching dog trainers sell other dog trainers books or sell books to their clients. And I think that the word of mouth is so powerful for DogWise specifically, as opposed to some of these big publishers. There are books that get around word of mouth on social media or people recommend, but really the power that I've seen in us continuing to sell books is people being like, oh my gosh, you haven't read this book. You have to read this book. Like, you haven't read The Other End of the Leash or The Culture Clash or Canine Enrichment for the Real World, go get 2 copies. It's one to read and one to give away when you've read it and you realize how great it is. And that word of mouth is just, it's so, so powerful. I've seen that again and again. And then it's interesting hearing you talk about going to these dog shows at the beginning of the DogWise becoming a company, you and Larry, because I've had the privilege of going to conferences with you and Larry and standing in the booth and listening to people talk and seeing, going to conferences is one of my favorite things about my job because you get to connect with so many people. And I get to have people come up to me all the time and say, I have this idea for a book. What would I do? Would Dogwise publish it? And being able to say, here's our next steps, or that book's already been written, or like what makes this idea that you have different and unique and not just the next, how many hundreds of puppy books are there now, but also thinking about what you're saying about, pre-internet. You started Dogwise before Amazon was a thing. And how has that changed? How has the advent of the internet changed how Dogwise is going? Because I'm thinking about you saying, people talking about these books at shows and thinking about now people can read reviews. But at the time, the feedback that you and Larry were getting was really about how are people receiving these books, and you're actually hearing what the customers want. And that's such a unique thing that we just don't have as much anymore.
We found out very quickly that dog people were early adopters of the internet. Like I mean, I'm not saying, we were obviously computer savvy and, that kind of thing. But it wasn't long before we started hearing things like my friend, and then finding out their friend was via the internet. And the people with common interests could get together. They knew each other from shows, but they wouldn't be able to communicate between shows. So when Amazon started, I mean, aside from the fact probably a lot of people realize we're in Washington State, so we're practically neighbors of Amazon. But when Amazon started, I mean, they broke all the rules. I mean, booksellers, Dogwise was and still is a bookseller, but Amazon was doing these steep discounts. And of course, if anyone knows anything about Amazon, is still not making money on their retail. I hear this from the tech people that we deal with Dogwise, and that is they're making money by something, cloud storage or something. They're still not making money at retail. So them selling things at such huge discounts was a little scary to us because, I mean, I go to Amazon and buy things. So what I want to say about that is initially we were still the only place you could get the IG breed book, Italian Greyhound breed specific book by last name Barbara, Sylvia, Sheila, something like that. I mean, I can still remember it. And and it was really the only decent book. Everyone out there probably knows sort of the boilerplate books from publishers, what they do, the German Shepherd, the Poodle, the Cocker Spaniel, the Cavalier, and they all were actually boilerplate. Like half of it was just repeat. But anyway, so when Amazon started existing, it actually strengthened us because they still didn't have the obscure books that we could carry. Then what happened was, it became more of an issue. Luckily for us, our customers, they're kind of like dog people. I don't know if this is fair characterization, but they're very loyal.
Yes.
And a lot of them we have met over the years. I mean, we no longer travel to dog shows. There's a lot of reasons why that is that I'm sure a lot of your trainers know. Expense, gas, all of that. But we did have Larry's brother, Bill, who a lot of people knew better than Larry or Charlene, and super likable guy, super friendly, and he represented us all over the country. So we had a lot of people actually get to our inventory in person. And so that still has we're still getting payoff from that. And so just the really unique thing about us, and that's because we own it, right, is we've gone from selling books only at dog shows, selling books, dog shows, and mail order. We followed the mail order wave, which was the late 90s, and the dog show wave. It's been a few years now, but there was a graph, I think the AKC or something put out, showing how popular dog shows were in the 90s into the 2000s, like the numbers of people attending and stuff. And we were able to be part of that. Absolute, not without planning, not without knowledge. It just happened for us. And then with this book, Therapy Dog, perfect example. Things changed at some big corporate level. We're small, and we could respond by simply knowing the author, having such a trustworthy reputation within the world of dogs, and working with her to create a better product. So that's kind of how we got into, and we were still not from scratch publishers. And there were a couple other books we did. The one I'm thinking of as a second edition was called Canine Massage by Jean-Pierre Ubede. And again, we asked for a second edition. It needed to have 1/3 new materials. And that book still, I think that we call them evergreen in the industry. Maybe there's a lot of people who use that term, but the idea is it's a perennial seller. It's not going out of date. Dog's physiology doesn't change. And so, and then from there, we did from scratch publishing. And I'd have to think hard what that book was. I'll have to think about it.
That's a good question. And it's interesting to hear you talk about, we still sell Canine Massage. It's still a book that sells well, like you said, on Dogwise. And there are definitely books I know that, people, the thing about selling books that's so interesting to me is it's not like when, dog people now are ordering something from Chewy.com and it's getting delivered to the house. It's literally getting delivered to my house right now. My dogs are barking. And you have to order the dog food or the dog treats again and again. But if you order a book, you're not going to order the same copy every 2 months or every 6 months or every year, unless you lose your books really often or give them away. But the idea of creating a product that people are really only going to buy once, or if there may be a professional that wants to recommend it or resell it or, sell it to their clients or things like that. But once they've kind of got the information, then what keeps them coming back is knowing that they can trust the Dogwise name and brand to produce more books that are going to have good information in them that they're going to want to read and learn more about. And it's interesting hearing you talk about, the way that the world has changed. You were talking about doing mail order and riding that wave in the 90s. What was it like getting Dogwise online and having an internet presence?
Oh, geez. Well, for one thing, when we hired consultants, I mean, we had, and we're small, but we were smart enough to know what we didn't know. So we hired a mail order consultant, computer consultants, and eventually our software that we had, which we were working on Apple computers, which I loved, but there was no software that could grow with us. So we actually had to write our own software that provided an integrated, the inventory and the mail, stuff people don't need to know. But what happened was we were doing it at a time where we hired a software coder type person who made more money than Larry and I. We had to pay them that much money to get them because it was the 2000s. It was boom, boom, boom. And we eventually ended up, Nate Woodward, who is in the family business, was one of those, I call them the fine young cannibals. And we replaced this high priced person and got these 3 young men to actually finish a big project to give us a system that would allow us to be integrated and not, be using little hash marks on a piece of paper. So the internet, and again, the internet it helped us a lot. Were we at the lead of any of it? No, we just took advantage of what our customers were essentially telling us, this is where we are. So that, and then, and so we ended up, I'm saying we, but the technicians that we had wrote programs that allowed us to grow.
Yeah, it's so neat that Nate, your son, was able to help build the back end and, from what I understand, help build the first website that
Yeah.
Dogwise had. And I've seen the website and I remember what websites looked like in the late 90s and early 2000s and, then integrating to a new software. And I mean, I tell people all the time, like Shopify didn't exist when we first started. And
Mhm.
it's a platform we've looked into now because like e-commerce, there are companies that are making business just helping you have an online store, but that wasn't the
Didn't
reality
exist, right?
for you guys. And again, kind of, changing with the times and rolling with the punches. And how did having a website or an internet presence affect having an international market? Had you, like, when did Dogwise
Oh,
decide to expand internationally?
well, people found us because, the books, everything's bigger in the United States. So, we were one-stop shopping if you wanted this and this and this on dogs. But people were hesitant because of the cost of shipping and um, to do that much business. But they would find us partly because several of our authors were UK.
Mm,
John Fisher was just a delightful Brit who would come. He would be brought over to the United States and be taken on a lecture tour. Um, there's been some other retailers, particularly in England. I mean, obviously the same language. And so you could say, I'm not saying we dabbled in it, we just, things fell in our lap. And then in turn, because we knew people, we could form relationships. Of course, what has happened now with print on demand books, ebooks is, we can sell to anyone, anywhere, at any time. And so we're not shipping much of anything to foreign countries. But without, it's obvious that any country where English is very prevalent, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, UK, um, they were a market for us, but they would have to find us, and we had mail order, and they could just give us an international money order, and it was complicated. It was complicated for them. I mean, we could still ship, but it was complicated for them.
did you and Larry notice a big shift when you started making the publishing projects available as ebooks with having a wider reach? Is that something that, like, how was that decision made? Or was it just something that was a natural progression? Do you
Well,
remember?
it was something. I don't know if you've ever heard your grandmother say to you or somebody say to you, you don't want to be the first to adopt it. You want it to kind of get proven, whether it's a hairstyle or bell bottom pants, right? So we weren't doing things early, we weren't early adopters, but we did learn. And there was always talk, talk, talk. Oh, ebooks are going to put print books out of demand, and luckily we have ebooks, and when we publish our own materials, they're ebooks, increasingly thanks to your work, Erica, audiobooks. um, that it makes it so much easier to do business that way. But you know it didn't happen right away. The last I heard, and for your audience, um, I've been replaced dog-wise, not because of bad performance, but but I'm more or less in my retirement years. And so there was a point with print books versus ebooks where we could say about 50-50. Larry
Mm.
is walking by me, he'll probably correct me. It's probably 1/3 ebooks and 2/3, and maybe Erica. But it was, I'm a turn paper pages person. Larry is an ebook. He's got a huge ebook library that books he's purchased. So we all live together happily, whatever form you want. And
It's
audiobooks,
interesting.
yeah. I personally, I am a auditory learner, but I just have not buckled down to podcasts, ebooks, and all that. That's just not me. But I'm grateful that, the technology is there and the skills are there to produce these for the customers who are.
Absolutely. It's an interesting debate on the internet. People saying, do you like paperback? Do you like an ebook? Do you want an audiobook? And I've always been like, I want all three. I want to be able to access it in every capacity. And that's something I've loved so much about working for Dogwise is I can pull it off of my shelf or pull it up on my iPad or listen to it. And getting to do the audiobooks has just been such a joy. And I've heard from a lot of people, and I hear this a ton when we go to conferences, people saying, thank goodness you finally have audiobooks because I have a learning disability or I can't sit down and read. But also, I remember talking to Nate about it. And he was like, I don't think our books would do well as audiobooks when we were first talking about this project. And I said, you have no idea how much time dog people, especially dog trainers, spend in the car. We drive everywhere, dog shows and dog consultations and driving to conferences. Like, we're driving. We might as well be learning while we're driving. And that has been a game changer for so many people. And I'm so glad that we have that. And again, it's fun for me. I'm listening, I'm editing the audiobook for A Dog's Fabulous Sense of Smell right now. And I was listening to it yesterday and I was like, oh, I've read this book several times. That was the first publishing project I got to help with. And I remember editing the paper proof that I got sent in the mail. And then listening to the audiobook, I was like, I don't remember that. It's funny how it like hits a different part of your brain and how you remember it differently.
Yeah,
So it is, I'm glad that we've got that as well. We have a comment, not a question. As a non-dog professional, I'm so grateful for the Dogwise audio format. That's wonderful to hear.
Erica, you have Erica to thank for it.
I'm so glad that project has taken off the way that it has in the last few years. I mean, when I first started, we had one audiobook that actually was not one that we had produced. It was someone had tried to pirate from us. And like, that's a thing that happens on Audible a lot where people will download an ebook and then hire a narrator to produce this book and then resell it. And apparently the narrator reached out and was like, I think you guys own the publishing contract for this. And so we took it over. And we had one audiobook when I started. I think we just last week released our 32nd audiobook.
Oh.
Yep. And we've got 4 in production right now. So they're coming and I'm loving hearing from the audience, like, make this one an audiobook next. And it's just been such a fun project. And another service that Dogwise offers that is a little outside of the publishing, but I've seen it really supplement the books is streaming video. We used to, and we do still carry DVDs, and people don't have DVD players anymore. So moving from DVD to streaming video, I've seen that in that same way, kind of switching the digital focus, but having, especially, I don't know if I can find it easily, but Claudia Fugaza's book,
Do As I Do.
Yeah, the Do As I Do. And she just did a second edition. And now instead of a DVD, we're doing a streaming video with like QR codes. Like, we're really rolling with the times now. But it's so neat to be able to see some of the visual things that are described in a book actually in a video format. And I love seeing that very complementary kind of meshing of that and that next evolution. We've got an interesting question from an audience member, and you may or may not have the answer to this one, Charlene, but are we seeing any effect artificial intelligence is having on your business?
Again, they don't even let me. I mean, I go to Dogwise to pick up, recycle cardboard. It's my understanding that people are, pushing a button, creating a book. Well, Erica is one of the people who would know better because she is one of the first filters when we get a book proposal. And for those of you, so the answer is, I remember Erica going, oh, this looks like artificial intelligence. And so don't ask me, ask Erica. Erica?
Yeah, I can say that we did have a few book proposals that came through that I remember reading and saying, I don't think a human wrote this. And I remember that Nate reached out to the author and said, did you use artificial intelligence? And of course they denied it. But the more this was now over a year ago, there were things that you could kind of put a text through and see how likely it was that it was AI. The thing that's been really tricky for me in my role at Dogwise in that specific job of trying to screen new publishing projects is AI is getting better and faster. And so it's harder for me to tell, was this written by a human or not? And so I am seeing an effect from when we are having submissions sent to us. Something that I am also seeing a lot of, and it's very discouraging, is people aren't coming to a publisher. They're just going to self-publish an AI book, put it on Amazon, use an AI generated art cover that looks awful, and put it up and then just start selling it on Amazon. And it's not something that has been vetted by Dogwise. It's not something that's been read by Larry, who's a spectacular editor. It's not something who, has scientific citations there correct. It's something that someone put into Chat GPT, wrote a book, got a Chat GPT generated, I don't know, an AI, I don't know how AI works.
ISBN.
Stay away from it. But they got an AI generated cover, put it up on Amazon, and now they're making money. And I don't know for a fact, but I would guess that is siphoning some of our business away from people who are like, oh, I can just get it on Amazon Kindle Unlimited for free if you have a subscription. But the information isn't necessarily accurate. Nobody vetted it. Nobody edited it. Nobody said, and that I think is so dangerous to the publishing industry in general, but also to what we do. And I think that is something I have heard from our customers, both through social media and in person at conferences, that they know that if it has the Dogwise logo on the spine, it's a trustworthy book. It's a book that they know has been very carefully written and edited and produced.
I'll tell you where we see even the internet, and that would include artificial intelligence, anything on breed specific things. You could just type something up, pros and cons of owning a Belgian Tervuren or something like that. And I think probably get decent guidance, and while that isn't, some of it might be artificial intelligence, it's also the way the internet and has affected our business overall. We used to sell lots and lots of breed books because they tended to be, you weren't going to find anything more than maybe Poodle, Cocker Spaniel, German Shepherd in a Barnes and Noble. And that would be if you were lucky. But, Erica, this conversation, and I thank Jay for this. This is actually a marketing approach that we should emphasize. When I talk to people, very often, I'll talk to people who are self-publishing a book in another field, and they'll tell me about their publisher, and I'll go, what's their name? Thinking, Penguin or something hardcore, whatever. And I find out if I Google it, that their publisher is charging them, maybe $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 to do what we as publishers do. And so this is what I want to say about Dogwise Books. We sweat over every word, every comma, every index thing. We sweat over it. And we really, it's the way we just are naturally. Maybe we should get smarter and push a button and do everything, you fact check by AI, but we know the customer, we know the experts. And that's, I do want to tell people something. I think it's kind of funny. Dogwise goes into this industry, and early on, if anyone remembers the name Carol Benjamin, Mother Knows Best, and a couple of other things, really notable books. She was the one who taught me how important Dogwise was to her. We were at a big dog writers conference when they used to all be together, and the authors would come. We'd fly out from the West Coast and go. And I remember she goes, I don't want to talk to them, meaning the other authors. I want to talk to you because you're the one who sells my book. And that taught me, I have this to offer people. I'm not just anyone. So this is what I want to say to people. Over time, am I someone who knew Karen Pryor and had her phone number and could call her up anytime, or some of the notable experts, again, people that are still, Ken Ramirez, I think he would take my phone call if I said I was Dogwise. And so I don't want to say I wasn't impressed with them, but we had something to offer them. And so they were just, and I don't want to say real friends, business friends. We
Mm.
had something to give them, and boy, they had something to give us, which is why you'll see the back of our books. Patricia McConnell, some of the endorsements are people like, oh, these are the experts and they're endorsing somebody else's book. It's because, number one, they have read this book. They don't endorse it. We give them the book. We say, and then sometimes they'll tell us how to improve the book, which
Yeah.
is also a big plus. So it's really cool for me because there are probably luminaries in some world, the gardening world that I enjoy dabbling with, that I would be speechless to be in front of. But, you know, we were their friend, business friends. So that's been sort of it's kind of cool. I mean, I guess, I don't know where I would name drop Karen Pryor, um,
At a
but
dog training
yeah,
conference.
at a dog conference, you know. But anyway, you know, that's been kind of interesting because we are part of your world, even though we don't do what you do. And we really don't do what you do. Never trained a dog in my life. I've taught a couple dogs to roll over just because I think that's fun. And but I'm not using a clicker. So it involves we won't talk about my dog training skills, but do I love this audience? Absolutely. Do I respect them? Even more, absolutely. I could almost cry when I could tell you about people who I met going to dog shows that would read the most technical veterinary books. And I knew, and they were spending their good money because maybe they were dog trainers, they weren't, neurosurgeons or something. And I, when they would buy the book, especially if they were one of a regular customer, I'd say, when you're done reading this, come back and tell me what you got out of it, because I could tell the next person. And it was never, I think, it was always our customers. And these were genuine conversations. I don't really know how to make things up like that. So it would be a genuine conversation of a customer saying, this is why this is a good book, or this is what's missing in the book. And that was also something that I was just naturally inclined to do. But people would come to me with a stack of books, like this. And I'm thinking to myself, I mean, it would take me 3 years to read something like that. And I'd say to them, I would often say, this is what our customers say. If you're a beginner, you do this one, and this one. Save these for later because they're great, but they're more advanced than you need
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Hearing you talk about it is delightful to me to hear you talk about how Dogwise was really built on relationships and the relationships that you formed personally and professionally over the decades that this company has been in business. And I think, when you were talking earlier about like people would be on internet forums, and yeah, dog people have been on the internet as long as the internet's been around, trying to connect, but not seeing each other except at shows. I think about like that's been my experience going to conferences where I have like it's like a family reunion or like summer camp vibes of like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in 6 months or since last year at this conference, and being able to have that connection with people, and especially being able to be at the booth at Dogwise and say like, what have you read? What did you think? Tell me more. And something I see that Ben has joined in, he has been one of our most adamant book club members recently, is
Thank you, Ben.
I would go to conferences, and for a couple of years, people would be like, they'd come up to the booth and they'd be like, I already have all these books. And I'm like, well, you don't have this one because we just published it last week. It's brand new. You've never seen it before.
Mhm.
And then I would hear people say like, oh, I've already read all these books, or I already have all these books. And people would come up and say like, I have that one and that one and that one and that one and that one. And I said, how many have you read? And some people would be like, just that one. And that was where my idea for forming a book club for Dogwise came from, was having some accountability of, you have all these books on your shelf, you want to read them. How do we do this together? How do we, for the dog nerds out there, how do we successively approximate actually reading the books on your TBR, your to be read list, and getting people to then talk about the books? Because I saw that so much at conferences where people would come to the booth and they would say, oh my gosh, have you read this book? It's so good. You've got to get it. Or like, this is what it's about. Or even to your point, like, I was very, very grateful and very lucky that I have read most of the books on my shelf, not all of them, but most of them. And I'm able to, someone will come up and say, like, hey, I'm interested in this topic. And I'll say, what are you looking to do? Or what have you already read? And then I can tell you what to read next. And that has just been, it's my favorite thing to do with people. And people ask on social media too, they'll say like, oh, I tried this book, but it didn't really work. Or I read a blog post about this. Can you direct me? And being able to say like, yes, I've got a resource for that. And it's just my favorite thing about, about working.
And I've seen you in action. The generosity that you show in helping draw out what people need versus what your opinion is. It's a unique skill, and I've seen it in action. It's magic, and you're also a very welcoming, warm person. I mean, I'm proud that you represent us at these events.
Thank you, Charlene. It is interesting hearing you talk about this at the beginning where, you said like we weren't really dog people, we weren't dog trainers. And I remember when I had my interview with Nate, I said, hire me because I'm your ideal customer. And so I know what your customers want because I'm the book reading, dog loving nerd who wants to just, get it all up. But also, I do this every day. I do train dogs, I do work with people, and being able to bridge that gap, I think has been a really helpful thing to be able to say, like, I don't know a whole lot about the publishing industry, but I do know what the customers want. So how can we work together to make that happen? Which has been it's been a really fun growth opportunity for me. We've got one interesting question from Ben, who's in book club, and he also has his own YouTube channel where he interviews authors and dog professionals. I got to be interviewed by him a couple of months ago. It was really fun. And like I said, he's very loyal in our book club. He's always showing up and buying the next book. He said, I've noticed recently that dog books seem to be closing the gap between professionals and lay owners. It seems that more books are straddling the two extremes. Do you see this, or is it just me? I would say that yes, I'm seeing a lot more of, I'm going to answer this kind of for Charlene since I'm the one who's reading all the books that are coming out, that there are a lot more lay people or dog owners, dog guardians who are wanting to learn more, thank goodness, about dogs and dog behavior, dog nutrition, dog breeding, dog breeds. And I am starting to see that a little bit more. I think what's interesting is I do see books that are like dumbing it down a little bit. And then we have the books that are like, no, here's the really technical, science rich, resource backed up things. And I think there's a need for both. I think there's a market for both. I think that's the great thing about books is that they meet you where you're at. That's a wonderful thing to say, like, I can get a lot out of this book where someone else might need a different approach, same information, but in a different way. So Ben, I think that's a really good observation that we are seeing more. I don't know if it's closing the gap, but I think it's that more people who are not professionals are more interested in learning more about their dogs. And I think that is wonderful because I think it is doing our dogs a great service to be able to understand them better. Watching how the dog industry has changed in the last 40 years and even how dog books have changed. It's so interesting. I pulled up the first page, the book that we were supposed to talk about on this little interview. I pulled up the first page, and this is the copyright page for the second edition. 2002, this book was published, the second edition of Therapy Dogs. And like Charlene said, it was one of the first books that we published as Dogwise. But as I was reading through the book, there were things that I was thinking they could do a third edition. Like, things have changed in 24 years. And, even we've got books that we've published in the last 5 years that authors have come to us and said, I've learned more since I published that book. I want to revise it. I definitely have more than 30%. What was it? 1/3, 30-ish% of new material that I want to add. And I do think that's such an interesting thing because, like, I had an author who said, as soon as the book is published, it's already outdated, right? And the information is already, and that's actually one of the great things about these second and third editions is like, great, let's update it. Let's get new knowledge in there. And I will say, I do want to say, I read through the book, the Therapy Dogs book, in preparation for this interview and to let people know more about it if they're interested in it. And I was really impressed with how thorough this book was with the knowledge, again, for the time that it was published, 20 plus years ago. This book still being something that could be a really great resource for people who don't know anything about therapy dogs, for people who are just getting started with therapy dog work, who want to learn more. And I'm, like I said, it really surprised me. And this is a book that also sells well on Amazon. I went and looked at customer reviews because I usually only read, I'll be honest, I only read the reviews that are on the Dogwise website, but we don't have as many customers as Amazon. So there's generally more reviews on Amazon than on Dogwise. But if anyone is tuning in, please go write reviews on the Dogwise website. Okay. We need a few more reviews. But I was looking at these reviews, and 66% of people who have read this book in the last 20 years have left a 5-star review, which is actually a pretty impressive number. And Charlene and I were talking about, like, does this book stand the test of time? And reading through these reviews of people who purchased the book, this review here on the bottom is from 2007. The one above it is from 2013. But there's also reviews of people who have read it as recently as last month. And so it's interesting to me to see more and more of these, people who are still finding value in a book that is old, maybe a little bit outdated, maybe could use updating, but also is still extremely valuable to the community and to the world. And that's the impact of Dogwise. I think it's a really amazing legacy, Charlene. Also, we did have Sarah. Sarah's one of the first.
Sarah Kalnies. Oh,
yeah, Sarah and I have done
forever.
Sarah and I have done a couple of interviews together, and I remember we were talking about, like, do we call them author interviews because it's not a book? Speaking of, I don't know, Sarah, how long you've been listening. We were talking about DVDs and then switching to
body language.
Sarah has 2 incredible products, and we just did an author interview a few months ago about those products and talking about them being streaming videos. But again, those are products that were out. They've been out for, don't tell Sarah, 20 years. We talked about, like, where's the time gone? But also, it's still there. It's still relevant. It's still something that people really find a lot of value in. So Sarah Kalnies just wants you to know, love you, Charlene.
Wow.
It's so neat to see in real time those connections that you were talking about, of these professional connections and colleagues that become friends, and you don't get to connect very often. And here's one now.
That's very fun. Good. Yeah. Good to see you, Sarah. Glad you're still doing the good work.
Yeah. So I am going to share with our followers who joined today and who might be watching this replay. We have, before I forget, I should tell you all, I did pick out a quote from the Therapy Dogs book. Like I said, I read through this book and I really was impressed with the information and the material that was in there. So I do encourage anyone who wants to learn more about therapy dogs, definitely go get this book. I'm going to share a coupon code. It's down here at the bottom, here at the end of our time together. If you use the code FBLive20, which is Facebook Live 20, you can save 20% on the physical book or the ebook. But before we leave, I also want to tell people about our book club. Our book club this month is Visiting the Dog Park. This book is currently available at dogwise.com for $1. So go get it, read the book, join us on Zoom at the end of the month. There's tons of information on our social media about our book club. And as of this morning, I'm very excited to announce that we will also be doing a live interview next Monday with 2 incredible authors. Milena De Martini Price and Patricia McConnell are going to be talking with us about separation anxiety in dogs. They have each literally wrote the book on separation anxiety. So if you have questions about separation anxiety in your dog, or you want to learn more, do not miss this live event. I do want to say, Charlene, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for the opportunity to work for this incredible company and get to talk about books and talk about dogs and connect with people. And we will sign off our live, but I will share that coupon code with everyone who is still here. Thank you all so much for joining us today.